Iraq's Prime Minister vows to liberate the country from militants as the army launches a counter-offensive to retake the northern city of Mosul. Iran's President Sheikh Hassan Rouhani offers military support to Iraq in its fight against terrorism. And Kiev launches airstrikes in eastern Ukraine after a pro-Russian activist shoot down a military transport plane, killing 49. Hello there, you're watching Ali Tijah World News and I'm Fatima Basim. Speaking from the northern city of Samarra, Iraq's Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki remained adamant that the recent militant advances are the result of traitors within the army's ranks. He also vowed to liberate the country's territory, calling on all Iraqis to take up arms and fight the militants.
What happened recently was not because of lack of weapons, but it was a ploy and it was a conspiracy and a collaboration when orders were issued from parties, which we know, for some of the troops or members of the units to withdraw, thus causing confusion. I seriously and firmly say that by the name of God, even if our heads were turned into bombs or our bodies turned into courses for tanks and vehicles to move on, we will not stop fighting them. So let them not be deluded. I call on the sons of Iraq to take up arms, join the army to defend the country.
Meanwhile, during a press conference in the capital Baghdad, the spokesman for the commander of Iraq's armed forces, General Qasim Atta, announced that government troops are in control of much of the territory in Salah ad-Din province. The newly appointed general also said that preparations were underway for a wide-scale military operation aimed at driving out ISIL militants from the neighboring Nainawa province.
I want to announce to all Iraqis that our brave and heroic armed forces have retaken most areas of Salah ad-Din province. This is only the start, and I promise you that the whole province will soon be under our control, the state's control. In Nainawa, our army is preparing its units to storm the province. We are preparing a massive-scale military offensive to retake the areas and surrounding neighborhoods from the terrorists of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant.
After days of pillaging across northern Iraq by ISIL militants, including the execution of 12 Sunni clerics in Mosul for refusing to swear allegiance to them, the Iraqi army has launched an operation to counter the extremists' attack. The situation looked bleak for the central government following swift advances by the ISIL, in which 3 provinces were occupied by the militants. The offensive, which also involved supporters of now executed dictator Saddam Hussein, had overrun a large chunk of northern and north-central Iraq since Monday, with Baghdad in their sight. Now that the aftershock of the initial attack is over, the army has once again mobilized its forces, and the operation to retake occupied territories is underway. Already Diyala and Salah ad-Din are back under government control, with the battle for Mosul expected to follow. The fight back kicked off on Friday when police and residents expelled the militants from the Doliya area, just 90 kilometers north of Baghdad. Further north in Salah ad-Din province, Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki traveled to Samarra for a security meeting, also visiting a revered Shiite shrine in the city, which was bombed by militants in 2006 and was a recent target of the ISIL. The visit came ahead of the military operation aimed at boosting the morale of the armed forces. The SWAT team of the Iraqi army reported that they killed 70 ISIL members and wounded 65 others, while destroying 8 vehicles. As fighting intensifies around the city of Mosul, residents have continued to flee in their thousands, with some recalling the terrifying moment when ISIL took over the city.
I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and saw militants everywhere on the streets. They had machine guns and mortars. They took gasoline out from cars and then set the vehicles on fire. We were frightened.
With the latest military operation now underway, it remains unclear how long it will take the Iraqi army to drive out militants from their newly found stronghold in the north, given the fact that a 6-month operation against the Al-Qaeda offshoot in the western province of Anbar is yet to provide tangible results. The Iraqi army may be in for another protracted and long battle.
Motivated by patriotism and a need to protect religious sites from the extremist groups, thousands of Iraqi volunteers are flocking to join the country's armed forces in the war against terrorism.
All aboard the train of a fervent nationwide volunteering movement in Iraq, where thousands of Iraqi men are picking up arms to fight against the extremist militants who have recently taken control of major cities. Thousands joined the campaign after Prime Minister and Commander of the Armed Forces, Nouri al-Maliki, opened the door to volunteers, and many religious figures, including Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali as-Sistani, issued calls for Iraqis to fight alongside the army in their war against militants belonging to the Al-Qaeda offshoot of the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant.
In response to the call by the Marja'iyya and in defense of Great Iraq, we, our sons and all our young men, decided to volunteer to defeat the ISIL and terrorism, which does not differentiate between one sect and another, and which is backed by regional countries and by politicians from inside Iraq who are Islamic militants themselves.
Driven by loyalty to their country and a strong impulse to safeguard religious sites, namely the shrines of the Shia Imams in Samarra, which came under attack in 2006, Iraqi volunteers are lining up in their hundreds to sign up.
This crowd of good people has come spontaneously and not for the sake of any financial reward, but in defense of the homeland, doctrine and sanctities. We pray to God to protect them all.
In Karbala, the turnout was remarkable, with a mass movement pushing men of all ages to enlist. But before heading to the battle zone, many of them make a stop at the shrine of Imam Hussein for blessings.
We are heeding the calls of the clerics. Within 24 hours of their calls, crowds began amassing in volunteering centers. We are here as volunteers ourselves.
Our tribes have weapons and arms from the government would serve us well too. Every tribe has weapons and is ready to fight.
These volunteers hail from different sects, united in a front against one common enemy. However, the highest number of volunteers comes from the Shia sect, which faces a deeply rooted battle with the Al-Qaeda affiliated group.
Political analyst Bassem Abu Tawiq joins us now from our Beirut studios. Mr. Abu Tawiq, could we see the fall of Iraq under ISIL?
Hello, thank you for inviting me. Actually, is a security crisis in Iraq. This being done of a sudden, the agreement between ISIL and the Mosul governor helped them to come and give up the city, his ambition to have his federal state. Also, the Kurd took advantage. Slowly, the picture became clear to the media, to Iraqi people, what's happening. But he tried to make his federal state, and the Kurdistani autonomous tried to get advantage of this crisis to dominate city of Kirkuk, which is city of Kirkuk under Article 140 and under the United Nations. Also, the Kurdish now dominating this city. They cheated the Iraqi Central Army camp in Kirkuk. They come, enter in the camp. They said, we are coming to support you. 3 hours later, they dominate and hold the camp. They took all the weapon and they sacked and out of the camp all the Iraqi army. This actually is ambition for the Kurd, but this is part of the Iraqi constitution law. Kirkuk will never be dealt like that. Is a difficulty. But what happened is, after occupied al-Mosul by Daesh, the ISIL, they left the city back to Syria border. but now under control of the Ba'ath Party remnants of Saddam regime. Now, Nujayfi, the governor, and his brother, which is the chairman, Osama Nujayfi, the chairman of Iraqi parliament, tried to negotiate to raise the voice, but I don't think so. They've been unlucky, but this attack, to be honest, is not attacking the Shia, attacking the Sunni unity. Why? Because Mosul is a Sunni city, now dominated by the Kurd. Kirkuk is also part of the Kirkuk, which is Al-Hawija, is a Sunni city. The disagreement between Al-Nujayfi and Al-Anbar people there, that make this Kurd to take advantage and also lose their unity. On the other side, we have, as you can see, before the election, we have a really strong propaganda between within the Shia community. They try to use the media and they raise the voice to win the election as much as they can get a member of parliament, of seat. But now, as you can see, and the picture tell, the Iraqi now is unity after Ayatollah and before Ayatollah mentioned his fatwa. They become volunteer to get rid of this ISIL. But the volunteer actually is not going to be in the front line. They're going to be replace the Iraqi army and stayed in their camp in the backside of the city. Is not going to be fight in the front line. Yes.
Yes. Now, President Obama said he won't send troops on the ground. What other options was he talking about?
I mean, America is not really being good to Iraq. Iraq now fight alone. There is some international voice like United Nations, Arab League supporting the movement of the Iraqi army. But what happened is America, there is a SOFA strategic agreement between Iraq and United States. Till now, America failed to support Iraqi army. Even the weapon given to Iraq is not same technology as the other country got, like the Israeli, what they got, the F-16 aircraft, and also other weapons. What we need, to be honest, we need the information by satellite from America, because they got this technology. If they are good to Iraq and good to Iraqi people, they should help them to give them the information and telling them where are their ISIL group base and help them to attack them. This is what at the moment what we need. We have the manpower, we have the weapon, we know what's going on. Also the Kurdistani people, this actually controlling the third of Iraq border. We can see only one side because central government, they're not allowed to enter in Kurdistan. Even the border is controlled by the Kurdish people. The airport controlled by Kurdish people. That means we need also intelligence information, security information, and the movement of Daesh. But I think the Kurdish make a big mistake that will never be easy to rebuild by the confidence between Iraqi central government and the Kurdish people. It's been increasing day by day. They selling the oil without permission. They bring Daesh. Daesh comes from ISIL, they come from the Turkish border. Turkey also involved in this situation because they got cheaper oil, which is $65 a barrel from Kurdistan. That's also, I don't know, lost the way, the route between Turkey and Syria. That was very economic, strong route to send Turkey product to Saudi Arabia and to the Gulf country. But when they lost it, they tried to recover their economy from Iraq and uses the Kurdistani people and give them and help them to have their ambition to have their own federal state. But this is a joke. In Turkey, there is a 20 million Kurdi, and in Syria, there is a Kurd. In Iran, there is a Kurd, and Iraq is a Kurd. There is no way they can have their own independent place. This is why actually they try to use even Israel. In Tel Aviv, there is some of the Al-Peshmerga army, they trained in Tel Aviv. Also the Mossad, they trained the Peshmerga camp in Erbil. Also the airport also been the Iraqi central government, no control of the airport, as I said, even the border. They don't give to Iraq the bill, the taxes from the Kurdistani region. This is why all being built up, their ambition to have, and actually I call it as a dream to have their own federal state. And also Kirkuk, they attacking people. I mean, I read there is a 17 girls being raped by the Peshmerga group in Tel Afar, which is a Turkmen city, Shia Turkmen city, part of Kirkuk. This is the behavior actually, it killed the unity, and also this Arab Sunni in Iraq now awakens, and also they follow the Ayatollah Ali Sistani fatwa, and also they join and volunteer side to side with other Shia brother in Iraq. Yes.
All right, thank you for speaking to Al-Ittijah political analyst Bassem Abu Tawikh.
Thank you.
The US Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel ordered an aircraft carrier moved into the Persian Gulf in case Washington decides to pursue a military in response to the deteriorating security situation in Iraq. The carrier USS George H.W. Bush moved from the North Arabian Sea accompanied by a guided missile cruiser and a guided missile destroyer. Well, Iran's President Sheikh Hassan Rouhani held a press conference marking his 1 year in office, where the deteriorating security situation in Iraq topped the agenda. Our Tehran correspondent Hussein Dabash has the story.
During a press conference marking his 1 year in office, Iran's President Sheikh Hassan Rouhani touched on a number of issues, including both domestic and foreign policy. The ongoing security crisis in Iraq topped that list.
Our troops are ready to defend Iran and are ready to defend Iraq. They will work with their Iraqi counterparts through solidarity. Iran stands by to provide help to Iraq's government against the militants within the frameworks of international law. So far, Baghdad has not asked the Islamic Republic for such help. Sending Iranian troops into Iraq has not been considered so far, and I think it's less likely to happen. I believe that the Iraqi nation itself will be able to tackle the terrorism issue there.
The Iranian president warned regional players of the dangers posed by the groups which they are backing, reiterating his country's readiness to confront any terrorist threat along its borders.
The Americans may also want to help, but I haven't received any word on this so far. However, if any terrorists want to get close to our borders and we feel the threat, we will definitely respond with every possible means. Those countries that are supporting the terrorists in Iraq and Syria, I will say to them that the Takfiri groups they support will hunt them down one day.
The president's remarks received mixed reaction on the streets of the capital, Tehran.
I believe that Iran should go into Iraq and help their Iraqi counterparts against these terrorists there, because we all know that after Iraq they will come here to the Islamic Republic next. I myself am willing to head over to Iraq and do something about it, but not without the permission and support from our government. I hope they act soon.
Iraq is our next door neighbor. All that is holy to us is now being threatened by terrorists. And of course, they will want to cause instability here in Iran as well. I think that Rouhani should do what he needs to do as soon as possible, because too many people have been killed by those Takfiri groups who have no religion. They are like beasts. We should not show them any mercy.
Sheikh Hassan Rouhani, who came to power 1 year ago, held his first annual press conference amid major developments in both Iran and the region. The crisis in Iraq remains a hot topic here in the Islamic Republic of Iran, as terrorists next door have made it clear that they will stop at nothing in terrorizing not only Iraq, but the entire region. Tehran, for its part, has made it clear that it will fight terrorism wherever it may be it Iraq or the region, and that fighting terrorism is #1 on its political agenda. Reporting for Al-Ittijah TV, Hussein Dabash, Tehran.
Political analyst Gholomali Khosro joins us now from Tehran. Mr. Khosro, what kind of assistance to Baghdad are we likely to see coming from Iran?
The crisis in Iraq and the advancement of terrorist group, Takfiri group, in provinces in Baghdad, in Iraq, is a threat to the whole region. And as Dr. Rouhani today mentioned, there are people, there are terrorists that do not respect any kind of election, and they don't respect the ballot vote, but they are speaking with bullet. Then this is the danger. We need a process of election and democratic process, and it was happening in Iraq after decades of tyranny and undemocratic ruling. And now that Iraqi people, Sunni, Kurd, Shia, Turkmens were voting, then this is happening. It shows that the real intention there in the region, not only in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan, in Syria, in other places, they are against any involvement of people, real people, one man, one vote. They are against this, and they wanted to rule with sword, not with vote, and then under the name of Islam, they are spreading the idea that Islam is not in favor of voting. Then this is too dangerous, and this would help those enemy of Islam. And Iran, as a neighbor with Afghanistan, with Iraq, with Syria, are ready, as always, to help Iraqi people in order to overcome the situation. And Iran, as always, is a friend, good friend.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. Political analyst Gholomali Khosrow, thank you. Meanwhile, Iran's Deputy Intelligence Minister announced that 30 suspected al-Qaeda militants have been apprehended across Iran over the past month. Al-Khazai added that al-Qaeda terrorists in Iran are making every effort to trigger insecurity in the country. This, as a major Islamic center in Egypt has issued a religious decree forbidding Muslims from joining the Takfiri militants of the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. Dar al-Ifta spokesman Ibrahim Najm announced the fatwa on Friday, saying ISIL's terrorist activities in Syria and Iraq serve the enemies of Islam. Dar al-Ifta is Egypt's official Islamic body that issues religious edicts. You're watching Ali Tijah World News, still to come. Polls close in Afghanistan's presidential runoff amid a high voter turnout. Welcome back to Ali Tijah World News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Iraq's Prime Minister vows to liberate the country from militants as the army launches a counter-offensive to retake the northern city of Mosul. Iran's President Sheikh Hassan Rouhani offers military support to Iraq in its fight against terrorism. And Kiev launches airstrikes in eastern Ukraine after pro-Russian activists shoot down a military transport plane, killing 49. Protesters in Kiev attacked the Russian embassy and vandalized cars belonging to the embassy staff in protest to Russia's alleged interference in Ukrainian affairs. More than 100 pro-Kiev protesters, mostly young people, demonstrated in front of the Russian embassy, pelting the building with eggs, while others overturned several cars, including some which appeared to belong to the embassy. The police, however, did not intervene.
I believe that had there been no Russian interference, nothing of what is currently going on would have happened. We can calmly and peacefully resolve all issues on our own.
Well, after Ukraine's president pledged an adequate response to the shooting down of a military transport plane by pro-Russian rebels, which killed 40 soldiers and 9 crew members, Kiev carried out airstrikes on rebel positions in the country's east.
The Ukrainian military has launched airstrikes against separatist checkpoints and a military base in Luhansk, after Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko vowed to respond to the downing of a military transport jet early in the day, which killed 40 soldiers and 9 crew members. The military transport jet was taken down by local militia forces as it approached Luhansk airport. Earlier, Ukraine's defense ministry said the troops were being transported to the Luhansk airport for rotation along with military equipment and supplies. Luhansk self-defense forces had confirmed that they were behind the downing of the transport aircraft. Meanwhile, in the Donetsk region, the Ukrainian army conducted an operation in the city of Mariupol on Friday, inflicting heavy losses on the bases of pro-Russian forces and arresting at least 30 of them. Ukraine's mainly Russian-speaking parts in the south and the east have been the scene of deadly clashes between pro-Russia protesters and the Ukrainian army, since Kiev launched military operations in the southeastern regions in mid-April in a bid to root out the protests there. The violence intensified after the Donetsk and Luhansk regions declared independence from Ukraine on May 12 following referendums, in which the region's residents voted overwhelmingly in favor of independence from Kiev. The vote was called illegal by Ukrainian authorities.
As the Israelis step up their search for 3 missing settlers in the West Bank, occupation forces have been boosting their positions along the Gaza border. Our Gaza correspondent Bassam Al-Atrash explains.
In their frantic search for missing settlers who disappeared in the occupied West Bank, Israeli occupation forces are throwing around baseless accusations against Palestinian resistance groups. Despite the geographic separation between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, the Israelis are suggesting that missing settlers may have been transferred into Gaza.
The Israeli side says that there are kidnapped settlers. Firstly, we do not know if this is true. For all we know, Israel might be making excuses to escalate the security situation in Gaza. Our response is that the Palestinian leadership is not involved in the kidnapping, and what Israel says and how they think is their own business.
Significant movement by the Israeli occupation forces has been recorded along the Gaza border, with warplanes patrolling the skies and the closure of the Erez and Abu Salim crossings. Israeli warplanes launched 2 airstrikes against targets in the southern Gaza Strip on Saturday, following a rocket attack from the Gaza Strip. The first Israeli strike was reported in Khan Yunis, targeting a base belonging to military wing of Hamas, the Al-Qassam brigades. No casualties were reported in that strike.
There might be an escalation in the following hours or days, since Israel is clearly confused about how to solve the heroic operation in Hebron last night. Everything is expected and we are ready to respond.
Perhaps the Israeli attempt to involve Gaza in the incident demonstrates the desire of the Israelis to escalate the situation in the hope of undermining the recent reconciliation agreement between the rival Palestinian factions.
I don't think that these soldiers were transferred to Gaza. This operation proves a total failure of the Israeli security services because it was carried out in Area C in the West Bank, and I think Israel is totally in the blank and totally confused, and they want to blame somebody. This is why I think such operation will be obliged by the Palestinian people in order to force Israel to release our beloved ones in the Israeli jails.
No matter what the situation is, Gazans are used to Israeli provocations. For now, the resistance groups are taking measures to protect the Palestinian people. Belsam Al-Atrash, Litijah TV, Gaza.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian Health Services said that a 7-year-old boy died after being wounded by an Israeli airstrike, which targeted the Gaza Strip earlier in the week. Israeli occupation forces said on Wednesday that its troops targeted members from an al-Qaeda-inspired group. However, the strike seriously injured Ali Al-Awar, who later succumbed to his wounds. Tens of thousands of protesters demonstrated in the Yemeni capital Sana'a, calling for the downfall of the coalition government. This as the country's economic situation continues to deteriorate with ongoing fuel shortages. Mohammed Al-Attab has more for us in the following report.
As Yemen's dire economic situation further deteriorates amid ongoing fuel shortages, tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets to call for the downfall of the coalition government.
We took to the streets to confirm that Hadi's decision of shifting the government is just a cosmetic change when he replaced corrupt officials with other corrupts. Such procedure is rejected by the people, and it is just a continuation of the same policy of partisan power sharing of the government.
The renewed protests come only 3 days after the country's president Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi reshuffled his cabinet. But the new ministerial appointments have failed to meet the demands of these protesters, who are calling for a government of technocrats.
The Yemeni people were waiting for real change in the ground to be conducted by President Hadi, a formation of government of technocrats which does not belong to any party, a government which will be loyal to the people. The current change is just a big lie to the people.
Political observers have argued that the government's persistent failure to meet the people's demands of ensuring electricity and fuel supplies could lead to a worsening crisis.
The long queues at the gas pumps, along with the deteriorating economic and security situation, are just some of the reasons behind the street protests. But many here are fearful of what comes next after all of the avenues of peaceful dissent have been exhausted. Mohammed Al-Attab, Litijah TV, Sana'a.
According to official figures, at least 46 people were killed in separate militant attacks across Afghanistan. The Interior Minister said that 11 members of the country's police force, along with 15 soldiers and 20 civilians, were killed. Meanwhile, polls closed in Afghanistan's runoff presidential election amid a high voter turnout. According to the Election Commission, the number of people who cast their ballots exceeded 7 million. Officials immediately began counting ballots, with preliminary results expected on July 2nd. The country's former Foreign Minister Abdullah Abdullah and ex-World Bank economist Ashraf Ghani are competing in what is expected to be a close race to succeed outgoing President Hamid Karzai.
The estimated numbers of the participants in today's election were more than 7 million, which includes 38% of women and 62% of men. The holding of a second round of presidential elections was a historic event in our country. This election paves the way for a democratic transition from one president to another.
Long queues outside polling stations are perhaps the clearest indication that the majority of Afghan voters have braved the threats from the Taliban to cast their ballots in the country's presidential runoff vote. For its part, the militant group has vowed to turn the elections into a day of non-stop attacks.
In the past 4 decades, Afghanistan has suffered a lot. We are tired of injustice, killings and insecurity. People are very hopeful now. Our goal is to choose our future president who can bring peace and stability to the country.
The two-horse race pits former Foreign Minister Abdullah against ex-World Bank economist Ashraf Ghani. Both have already cast their ballots, expressing their optimism over the process, which should facilitate the first democratic transfer of power in the country.
My message to the people of Afghanistan is that today is your day, today is our day, today is Afghanistan's day, and better future is awaiting for them, and better prosperous life is awaiting for them, peaceful life is awaiting from them. By voting to us, inshallah, their future is assured, their future is guaranteed.
The first round, there were many candidates. The nation was not presented with a clear choice. This time it's a clear choice between two leaders with different visions, different experience, two teams committed to different ideals.
But despite the praise, the process has been fraught with accusations of fraud by both candidates. The rival camps blamed ballot box stuffing from preventing them from securing an outright majority back in April. Abdullah and Ghani have both pledged to stem corruption and improve the livelihood of Afghans who have suffered from years of deadly violence. However, the withdrawal of foreign forces from the country, scheduled for the end of this year, is likely to be the dominant issue for the new president, as the 12-year US-led occupation has failed to bring peace to Afghanistan.
Political analyst Saeed Andrabi joins us now via Skype from London. Mr. Andrabi, what does the high voter turnout in these elections tell you about the Afghanis' determination to bring change?
All right, thanks for having me on the show. Let's start by looking at the turnout. The turnout was less than expected. There was a better turnout in the first round, and in the first round, it was not the presidential election only. There were elections of some local governors also. There was a huge turnout, but this time the turnout was less than expected. But then we must also consider that there were huge threats. The Taliban had threatened that they won't let the elections go. But by all standards, it's now safe to say that people in Afghanistan definitely they want to get rid of a legacy of war and bloodshed and killings, and they definitely want a democratic era. But having said that, I have to the point I want to make on your show is the Afghanistan situation. It has been in flux. There has been trouble since 1979 when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. So there have been lots of outside influence, Pakistan, India, USA, and of late the Gulf and Saudi Arabian influence. And these influences, they have cultivated people there. So at the time of election, for example, Dr. Abdullah and Ashraf Ghani, they are again thought to be favorites. For example, Abdullah is thought to be a very pro-India figure. Ashraf Ghani is a Taliban figure, although he was in USA when Taliban were fighting. But these are truly not very independent figures. They are favorites of one or the other, and they have their own warlords. But let us see how if the process goes on, then it will lead to better results.
Yes, and how different are these presidential hopefuls from each other when it comes to actually changing the situation in Afghanistan?
They could be different. Dr. Abdullah is from the Northern Alliance, Tajik, with an Islamic background, and Ashraf Ghani is a World Bank economist. I trust Dr. Abdullah has better intellectual capabilities, but it's not only how they will choose to change Afghanistan or govern. It is the ground reality they have to face. Now, on the ground reality, they have to interact with warlords and different forces, entrenched forces and influences. They have a very difficult job to do. But yeah, there is some difference, and at the moment, the biggest challenge for them are the issues of security in Afghanistan. They have to ensure that they really exercise authority. It's not like Karzai, who was confined to presidential palace and his authority ended there. It should not be like that. The first challenge before the president is that they should be really the president and the chief of the Afghanistan.
All right, thank you for speaking to Ali Tijah, political analyst Saeed Andrabi. At least 30 militants were killed and dozens of others were injured after a bomb detonated near a weapons market in the eastern Syrian province of Deir ez-Zor. Syrian state TV reported that the blast in the town of Mayadin near the Iraqi border was caused by a car bomb. The attack was reportedly carried out by extremists belonging to the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. 9 top officers from the so-called Free Syrian Army have resigned over shortages and mismanagement of military aid from donor countries. Faced with successive defeats across Syria, militants say they lack the assistance needed to change the course of the war. In addition, the militant infighting, which has been raging since the beginning of the year, has killed hundreds of insurgents. Tunisia's political parties have agreed on an electoral timetable after months of delays, vowing to hold legislative and then presidential elections in 2014. The Islamist Ennahda party, which dominates the National Constituent Assembly, had wanted the legislative vote first, while their opponents mostly thought the opposite. More than 50,000 children in South Sudan face death from hunger and disease, according to the United Nations. The UN has asked for over $1 billion to support those affected by the 6-month civil war in the world's youngest country. The conflict has already killed thousands and forced more than 1.5 million people from their homes, with aid agencies warning of the risk of famine should fighting continue. The treatment of migrant workers in Qatar is adding to the controversy over the decision to award the country with the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Every year, tens of thousands of Nepalese end up working on construction sites enduring grim conditions, while some pay the ultimate price, returning home in coffins.
A familiar sight at Kathmandu's airport, coffins from the Gulf bearing the bodies of Nepalese workers. Every day, hundreds of workers leave Nepal, many heading for Qatar, where demand for labor has skyrocketed in the run-up to the 2022 Football World Cup, but at a cost. According to government figures, at least 360 of these workers have died in Qatar alone in the last 2 years, but this has done little to dissuade others from leaving the Himalayan nation.
We have no choice. We have to go overseas. We can't get good jobs or good money here. What can we do here? We have to go there.
Former migrant Bhupendra Malla nearly died when his legs were crushed in a workplace accident 3 years ago. His Qatari employers refused to pay any compensation and he took them to court.
I had a family to feed. I needed money, so I fought for 2.5 years. During that times, I sometimes felt that I would just rot and die there.
Mullah was one of the fortunate ones, managing to secure $33,000 in damages. Meanwhile, campaigners say many others endure harsh working conditions.
They have to work 18, 19 hours a day, and they do not get proper food, proper accommodation, or in fact sometimes they do not have accommodation facility, even though that is written in the contract period. And because of this fact, the health goes down and down.
Nepal's government says it wants to resolve the problem, but argues that it can't do much on its own.
At the ground level, the responsibility lies with the local recruiting agency here and the employer over there.
6 months after Mullah returned to Nepal, he still hasn't found a job, but says nothing could persuade him to go back to Qatar.
Here's a reminder of our top stories. Iraq's Prime Minister vows to liberate the country from militants as the army launches a counter-offensive to retake the northern city of Mosul. Iran's President Sheikh Hassan Rouhani offers military support to Iraq in its fight against terrorism. And Kiev launches airstrikes in eastern Ukraine after pro-Russian activists shoot down a military transport plane, killing 49. Well, that's all from me and the Al Ijtihad News team. Thank you for watching and good night.